Hello everyone, welcome back to our book club.
Hi there everyone.
I am Miss Maka.
And I am Mr. Daryl. We're back for another season of book discussions.
And what is today our book, Mr. Daryl?
Today we're talking about Hamlet by
William Shakespeare.
It's a classic tale of a boy who seeks revenge on his father's death.
Yes, and this book is widely regarded as the best written novel ever. Before we start talking about the book, let's look at our agenda. Of course, firstly, we will look at the vocabulary that we need during our program. Then we will talk about the author, so who created this masterpiece. After that, we will tell you shortly what is the book about.
We'll move on to a look at the characters, have a look at the setting, the when, the where, and then follow up with the main themes.
Yep, and we will never forget our homework.
Of
Definitely
course.
the last part of our program is giving homework.
Let's first move off to the vocabulary, Ms. Maka. Now we have a bunch of phrases as normal, as usual. The first phrase, to take revenge on something. This is when you return harm done to you previously.
This is შურისძიება.
To take revenge on something. Our next phrase is poison, a noun, poison. This is a substance that can seriously harm your health if you're not careful.
საწამლავი, შხამი.
Our next word is a verb, to trick, to trick. This is when you deceive or fool someone on purpose.
მოტყუება.
Our next word is widow. It's a noun, widow. This is a woman whose husband has died and who remains unmarried now.
ქვრივი.
Our next word is a verb, to swear, to swear. To make a serious promise to someone that you will be loyal to or you will stay loyal to.
Yeah, and I think you should never swear because it's really difficult to do it, right? Swear, დაფიცება.
Very good. Our next word is a verb, to blame, to blame. This is to hold someone or something responsible for some action caused before.
This is დადანაშაულება.
And the last word, funeral, funeral, a noun, funeral. This is the ceremony that happens when someone dies, put on by the loved ones or the relatives.
დასაფლავება, დაკრძალვა.
Great. Let's move on now to the author. Of course, William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, born in the mid-16th century, 1564, in a town called Stratford-upon-Avon, now very, very famous in England because he was born there. He got married pretty young, at the age of 18, to a woman who was about 26 at the time, so it was slightly unusual. By the end of the 16th century, his fame starts to take off, and he arrives in London, and he starts basically what is possibly the most famous literary career ever.
In 1592, he received his first public recognition as an upcoming young dramatist and writer in London. So between the years 1588 and 1613, he wrote 38 novels. So his plays are very diverse. So he used to write comedies, some tragedies, and also romances, exactly. And Shakespeare is also well known for his sonnets, so written in the early 1590s.
Very good. I think it's time for our first question to the audience. We've spoken a lot about how Shakespeare is the greatest writer in the English language. I'm interested in knowing who might the famous Georgian equivalent of Shakespeare be.
Oh, that is interesting.
Why don't we ask our audience?
I think our poet Ilya Chavchavadze is the equivalent of Shakespeare in Georgia. He had the same influence on our culture using many different genres.
Great answer. I've heard that name before, Chavchavadze.
Of course, you would have heard his name because his work is also as diverse as William Shakespeare's work.
Oh, and it's a great comparison.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. Okay, now let's move on to the summary part. So late at night, the guards on the rooftop of Denmark Castle, this is called Elsinore Castle, are met by Horatio. Horatio is Prince Hamlet's friend from school. So at that moment, a ghost appears.
And I should set a bit of the background up. So Claudius, Hamlet's uncle, has married his mother now, who has lost her husband, Hamlet's father. And everything is a little weird in the kingdom of Denmark, where they are. When Hamlet hears about this ghost, he's already feeling quite sad about the death of his father, and he wants to see the ghost for himself.
Yes, and this is when actually the main plot of the story starts to appear, because the ghost claims that he is the father, the ghost of the father, and he wants to tell his son that he was murdered by Claudius, who is the present king and also the uncle of Hamlet. So after hearing this, Hamlet is very disappointed and he decides to take on revenge on his uncle.
According to the plan, he plans to act really strange, to confuse people as to what he's thinking about. He rejects Ophelia, this girl that that loves him and he had feelings for. He starts to spy on people, and they start to spy on him, thinking that he's behaving really strangely for the prince of this kingdom. They had hoped to find the reason for his weirdness, the girl's father, Polonius, and a few other characters, but they can't. They can't understand Hamlet, and that's one of the main things about this play. Hamlet seems to be this character that you can't really understand. Claudius, the uncle, the villain of the play so far, summons two fellows, Guildenstern and Rosencrantz, friends of Hamlet, to see what's happening to this guy.
Yes, and Hamlet writes a play where the scenes actually mimic the murder of his father. And he plans, and during the rehearsal, he plans to show this play to the king and the queen. Maybe this is because he's really interested what the reaction would be.
Yeah, and it's a clever idea. Have a play to find out what people are thinking.
Exactly. Well thought.
In the performance of the play, Hamlet watches Claudius, his uncle, closely to see how he reacts to what he sees in this make-believe play. And it works. The play provokes Claudius to run out of the viewing area, and Hamlet knows that he feels something. He knows something's up.
Yeah, and actually Hamlet is summoned by his mother, Gertrude, and on the way he happens upon Claudius kneeling and attempting to pray, and Hamlet decides to spare his life from the time being.
Hamlet kills Polonius, Ophelia, the girl who likes him's father, by mistake at this point, at a certain point. The ghost of Hamlet's father comes to him and says, you know, stop messing around. Hurry up, you have to revenge, you take revenge upon me.
Yes, and Hamlet is sent to England, so maybe as an ambassador, and this is the time when the king of Norway actually crosses Denmark with an army to attack Poland.
Up to now, Hamlet's been sort of going here, going there, not really acting. Finally, in Denmark, he finds out that Claudius, his uncle, has been trying to kill him, or has planned to kill him. And this maybe starts the final section of the play. He kills the two people that were sent to kill him, Guildenstern and Rosencrantz, and he comes back now to Denmark once more to do his final deed.
Yes, and rejected by Hamlet, Ophelia is now very desolate, and we can say desolate, it's like she's very depressed and sad, and because of the loss of her father, and she goes mad and drowns.
And now this is the final part. Claudius plans to kill Hamlet. The plan doesn't work, and a lot of weird things happen now. Gertrude, the mother of Hamlet, drinks from a poisoned cup and dies. Hamlet is wounded by a poisoned sword, and before he dies, he kills his uncle.
Yeah, and we can say that only Horatio is the person who remains alive, and he is the one who will tell the truth to the new king when he arrives, like when they won the war against Poland.
So the loyal friend is the only one that survives in this play.
Exactly, and she's the only one to tell the truth, what happens. Okay, so now it is time for our next question. So the ghost could be real, or it could be something that Hamlet imagines himself, right? So what do you think, and can you pick out a moment from the summary that best shows this?
I think that the ghost is imaginary. After the ghost tells Hamlet that his uncle killed his father, he still wants to find out the truth by investigating everything by himself. So I think he simply doesn't believe what the ghost tells him.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, there are lots of debates about this, like whether Hamlet actually saw the ghost or it was his imagination or he was actually mad.
Yeah, it's a great point to pick out from the summary.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Now let's move on to a look at the characters as we promised. We have the main characters of this play, starting off with Hamlet himself, the name of the protagonist of the play. He's the Prince of Denmark. It's his father that's been killed. It's his uncle that is the villain. Hamlet is about 30 years old, but he's still shown as a kind of teenager. He's 30, but he's presented as a kind of unsure teenager. His mother is Queen Gertrude, who marries his uncle, and all of this makes him very angry. He's just unhappy with everything. He's melancholy, he's bitter, he's cynical, and he's full of hatred about what has happened in his household. He's reflective and thoughtful, but he's also indecisive, and he doesn't really know what to do sometimes. But when he does act, he's extremely rash and brave in a way.
Yeah, hearing all those descriptions, I would say that he's more like a weak character.
He seems weak very often until he does what he does.
Okay, thank you very much. So our next character is Claudius. So this is King of Denmark and actually uncle of Hamlet, as we already mentioned. The villain of the play and the antagonist. So he's driven by his appetite and his lust for power. But beside this, he also shows some sincere feelings when he actually shows love for Gertrude. But I would say that this one fact, this is the only one case where he is sincere, and he would not, it would not make him show as an honest man.
Yeah, I mean, he really is the villain. That's the one thing that makes him look nice, and even that is not big enough.
Yeah, exactly, not enough.
Let's move on to Gertrude, the mother of Hamlet, the Queen of Denmark, Hamlet's mother, recently married to Claudius, the uncle. Gertrude is a good woman. She loves her son very much, but she's a bit weak as well. So here's another weak character.
Yeah.
She seeks affection and status more than doing what's morally right or true.
Yeah. Our next character is Ophelia, a very young and beautiful woman with whom actually Hamlet is in love. She's very dependent on men. She obeys her father, her brother, and later, of course, Hamlet. But by the end of the story, we can see that she is also seen as a weak character, and she couldn't resist all those problems and troubles, and she drowns herself by the end of the story.
So a lot of weak characters so far.
Yeah, exactly, but still this classic is very strong.
Look at the ghost now, the ghost of presumably the father of Hamlet. This ghost, who claims to have been murdered by Claudius, calls upon Hamlet to avenge him, to take revenge for his death. However, it's not entirely certain whether the ghost is who he is. We're never given proof that he is who he is. Hamlet speculates that the ghost might be a devil, in fact, at a certain point. He thinks this might be a devil that's been sent to trick him. And the question of who the ghost is never really resolved.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it was some kind of an exam for him that he actually couldn't pass or could pass, who knows. Like, this is totally up to the readers.
To decide.
Yeah, exactly. And our last but not the least character is Horatio. So he is Hamlet's very close friend from the university. He stays very loyal to Hamlet throughout the play. And we can see that he is the only character who stays alive after Hamlet's death and tells the story.
Well done. Let's ask a question now based on these characters that we looked at. Do you think that Hamlet is a very modern character or a traditional one? Remember, it was written many centuries ago, so you'd think it would be traditional, but do you think there's something modern about him?
Hamlet seems very modern to me because he's very introverted and thoughtful than other characters from other plays at that time.
Great answer. Yeah, that makes him sound very modern, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. He's more intellectual than maybe other characters from the other plays.
More introspective, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, let's move on to the setting now.
So yeah, from the setting part, let's talk about the genre. So Hamlet is one of the most famous tragedy ever written, and it exhibits lots of features that actually shows traditional tragedy, and it's sure it is a tragedy.
Mm-hmm. He fits the classic mold. He's an important person in the kingdom, and he shows a lot of admirable traits that we look up to.
Now let's move on to the where part, so where the story happened. This is Elsinore, and the English spelling is Helsingør. This is the name of the city, the town in the east part of Denmark.
Helsingør in Shakespeare's time was a military town in Denmark, though I doubt that he ever visited it, so probably it's from his imagination that he's dreamt up this town.
And now it's time for our question. So we have mentioned that this story is a tragedy, right? I'm really interested, why do people actually love to watch tragedies in the theater or in the cinema?
In my opinion, why people love to watch tragedies is because they make us see how difficult life is and how we all share difficulties.
Well said. There is something to watching tragedies, and you feel the emotions.
Yeah, and also I think maybe we're looking for some answers. Maybe. So how would they act in this situation? Who knows?
And maybe it's better to see it on the screen rather than experience tragedy.
Yeah, of course, definitely it is.
So let's move on to the main themes. And the main themes of the book are many, but we've chosen two to talk about today. The first is we're going to focus on the complexity of action in the play. It's not always easy to act in the play. How is it possible to take reasonable, effective, purposeful action? For Hamlet, it seems to be quite difficult. He has rational things to think about. He's thinking about the situation and what to do. But he's also beset with emotional problems, ethical considerations, and maybe possibly psychological problems.
Yeah, and Hamlet himself distrusts the ideas that it is even possible to act in a very controlled way. So when he does act, he acts recklessly and violently.
And the other characters in the play actually think about action even less than Hamlet does. They just do what they feel like. It's only Hamlet who's the one that has to think so much about these things.
Yeah, thank you very much. And our next main theme that we've chosen for you is madness. So this is one of the central questions that this story actually presents. And the question is whether the main character has actually lost his mind or is just pretending.
There's certain times in the play when he says like crazy things or nonsensical things, and he behaves in a confusing manner. Is it real madness, or is he pretending to be mad in order to find out things?
Yeah, exactly. And in some situations, we can see that this is very logical, that he has this kind of attitude, because he is in a very mad situation. He does not know the way out. He knows that his father was murdered, and he doesn't know the murderer. So, of course, there are some reasons he could go mad.
And of course, when you dance with the devil too much, when you get too close to madness, the problem is at the end, maybe Hamlet does go mad because of all of this, so it's confusing.
Yeah, and final question for our audience. So do you think that Hamlet is a depressing play, or it has a hopeful message?
I think Hamlet is a hopeful play. By seeing the character on stage, we can understand what it means to accomplish something difficult, despite not being a typical or classical hero ourselves.
Yeah, thank you very much. After hearing this answer, I would think about it, because I would say that it is a depressing story.
No, it is depressing, but maybe in the depressing aspects of it, it becomes hopeful. There's a way out.
Yeah, and that's a better ending for our today's program. Okay, now I think it's time to wrap up everything, right? So we started with the author, who is William Shakespeare.
And then we looked at the summary of the story, a man who loses his father and has to take revenge.
Of course, there were some characters, main character Hamlet, and here I would say one of the well-known saying from him. This is, "To be or not to be, that is the question."
A classic line from a play.
Exactly, and in Georgian this is "Qopna ar qopna sakitxavi ai es aris." So this is a very, very famous saying from the book.
From there, we looked at the setting. We looked at this genre of tragedy, and we looked at the when and where. Late 16th century in Denmark.
From there, we've shown you some of the main themes that we have chosen. This is complexity of action and madness.
Let's have a look at the words one last time, and I'll say it slowly for pronunciation purposes only. To take revenge on, poison, to trick, to reveal, widow, to swear, to blame, and funeral.
Thank you very much. And we should not forget our last part of the session. This is giving homework. Mr. Daryl, what is our homework?
Here it is. Here's your question to think about and to write about. Why is the character of Hamlet such a popular and interesting person? Think about the things we talked about. Think about the things we said in the character study as well.
როგორ ფიქრობთ, რატომ იქცა ჰამლეტი ასეთ პოპულარულ და საინტერესო გმირად? დაფიქრდით ჩვენ მიერ წარმოდგენილ თემებსა და გმირებზე.
It's been interesting to learn that Shakespeare's been very popular in Georgia as well. There's a huge history of plays like Hamlet and Othello and so on becoming popular here.
Yes, of course, and he is very famous all over the world. Okay, I think that is the end of our today's program. Thank you, the audience, for really interesting answers.
Yes, I really enjoyed those answers. Thank you to the TV audience as well for watching.
Thank you. See you next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.